she'll do lower income and lower taxes.
Lower income.
So she lower everyone's income?
Yes.
Is that
I mean, it's here's the problem with that. We like some of you out there are probably conservatives laughing at that and saying, look at those idiot liberal Democrats. But there's a bunch of Trumpers that are conservatives that are just as dumb as that lady. So all right, everybody, we're back with the PEMPod again. This is Dorian, formerly Worthington Calhoun, which we've abandoned now that we've made it this far in this process. So I usually open with things about the week, what I've been going through, what I've been experiencing, and and this time I'm not even some of the topics we're going to cover today. I'm not maybe that knowledgeable on. We'll see. But had a very interesting week in which I took a deeper dive into my own personal growth and issues, my own possible egoic triggers, things that drain me of energy, are getting in my own way, all of that stuff. That's what the channel's about. Pragmatic ego management is what PEM stands for those of you who are not sure what it means. And this comes from an ideology that I discovered from northern Mexican shamans and how they approached the Spanish conquistadors. So that's kind of where this comes from. And it's interesting because we were even right now before this episode just discussing some topics, and I think it's pertinent to what I'm going to talk about here. I had a relationship recently that appeared to be coming to an end, and it was about a 3-year relationship with a woman I've been seeing, and there were some difficulties in the communication. There was definitely some ego, and there was some trauma, and there was some concrete circumstances around, job and work and time management and all of those things. And then took a deeper dive and started to realize that old programming was really affecting how I communicated with her, and so I was certainly to blame. And this is very interesting. This is a big topic, actually, enough to where I could do a whole episode on it. So I'm not going to. But when somebody discusses their romantic partners or even old friends or things like that, and they take zero responsibility for anything in the relationship, and they just blame the other person as being a narcissist, we hear that word being thrown around a lot nowadays, right? Narcissism, narcissist, malignant narcissist, all these things. Those people that we would even categorize as label as a narcissist, or even much further, we go into malignant narcissism, I believe are probably, being exhibited within the population far less than we're attributing. And that's because most of the people that are labeling others of this are probably not taking full responsibility for their own selves. Now, understand that doesn't mean that the other person is acting in a positive, well-meaning, conscious way. These people could be acting in really difficult, challenging, and toxic ways. But then we don't take responsibility for our own reactions to that and responses, which you'll find are very powerful. So, and you only find that out when you change your responses, which can be really difficult. And that was the topic we were just having. We're just talking about road rage. And I use 2 models. One's a neural pathway model. So in the road rage example, there's a ingrained neural pathway that's being triggered by the actions of another person. Let's say they've cut you off. And the immediate response is anger and frustration. And then there's an overt reaction of some sort of communication, maybe flipping someone off, maybe honking your horn, maybe yelling out your window. And now you've begun to reinforce the neural pathway. There was a trigger, and then there's an action that took place, a sequence of actions and emotional responses within yourself, and that neural pathway is now being reinforced. And the analogy I like to use is sort of like a grassy foothill that has no trails on it, and then people or maybe even animals like deer start walking those trails. And if you look at the trails, there's going to be some that are very minor, they're even hard to see, and then some trails that are much deeper, and some that if you walk them enough, maybe they even turn into sort of a pseudo road. And if you stop all traffic on that hillside, then the ones that got walked the most are going to take the longest to go away. And so if something is causing you to damage relationships, or it's causing some damage to yourself, or it's causing disharmony and a bad mood the rest of the day, which is probably also affecting your physical health, then it's undesirable. And so that would be a neural pathway that I would like to get rid of. And that is going to be much more difficult the more I reinforce it. But there's another model, and it's more of the Toltec model, which comes from shamanism and what they might even call as sorcery in that culture is, well, that might be one way you could say it, but anyway, is this idea that ego is really an entity, and that entity is one that possesses us, convinces us of an identity that that's who we are, and that then gets us to feed it through most of the time negative emotion, but then also sometimes a feeling of positive emotion over being superior to others, over winning some competition, over attaining some material thing or something that then you've associated with your identity that then gives you a boost inside yourself. So it's actually both negative and positive, and this also makes the ego kind of tricky. So in the road rage example, it's negative because it's anger, it's rage, and it's kind of disharmonizing, very disharmonizing. And not that the positive side is any more harmonizing, it maintains a different structure, maintains an identity that later on is fragile and is easily upset and then becomes a negative in its way. So ego never leads to anything positive. The type of definition of ego that I'm using here, it's very important that we understand mine. It's a very specific definition. So in this model, what we have is an entity that is feeding from us through our actions. And so the way to stop that is not to feed it. And how do you not feed it? It's similar to the neural pathway model. Then I don't react. I don't engage in the activity that I'm triggered by. I don't engage in the response, and therefore I don't feed the entity. And the Toltecs use this term ruthlessness. And ruthlessness is something that took me many, many years to understand, because I thought, gangsters are ruthless, or I just use the example of Frank Lucas in the movie American Gangster, where he shoots the guy in the head that was trying to tax him. That was the actor's name was Idris Elba, that played the guy that Denzel Washington shot. That's a ruthless moment, but it's ruthless towards the human being, and in fact, it's the opposite of ruthless to ego. He actually fed the ego in that moment, and instead was ruthless to the organism, to the human being. In this model, it's the opposite. Instead of being ruthless to the human, we're ruthless to ego, and that is a very different practice, and one that's extremely difficult, as we were just discussing the challenges, because there's a part of us within ourselves, as we're starving this entity, as we're starving that neural pathway, however you want to look at it, that feels like it's being starved, like within us, like something within us. The identity of ourselves is not being fed, and so that's what creates a sense of suffering in that moment. And so you have to endure that with a ruthlessness that then does not feed either the neural pathway model or the entity model in the metaphysical version, whichever way you want to look at it. Anyway, we're going to get into some videos. I will talk about that stuff a lot more. I kind of mentioned the relationship thing. I didn't go any further with that. That had to do with programming that was there from when I used to be involved with very dangerous things for many, many years, and it made me hardened and it made me very strange with information. I don't share information in normal ways. I withhold information. I give very need-to-know based information, and it makes people feel strangely about me. They don't know who I am. They feel kept in the cold and the dark, and it makes sense, and that's how this young woman was feeling. So anyway, this all becomes automated programming, and that's kind of what this is about, in beginning to dissect the ego and understand how to mitigate it, manage it, and diminish it as much as possible. All right, we'll get into the videos now.
We used to have stop and frisk for criminals in this country, but liberals whined, so now we only have it for soccer moms at the airport.
So you like it when police stop and frisk black people, but you're angry when white women have to go through a metal detector. Got it.
So I guess in this guy's mind, the guy eating, the Harrison Walls cookie, how cute. I guess in his mind, black people and criminals are synonymous. like I said, if you look here, it says for criminals in this country. And he somehow turned it into black people. And it's weird because he does it with this smug, I'm better than you attitude. In his video, he didn't mention race one time. He talked about criminals and soccer moms. And what this guy did is took it and turned it into two racial things, white women and black people. There are soccer moms who aren't white, and there are many criminals who are not black. But again, in the liberal mindset, everything is about race, sexual orientation, gender. You have to put it in some category. They talk about unity, but they divide everything by race, sexual orientation, gender. These people are insufferable.
Right. There's a couple of layers happening there. There's multiple things going on there. One, I believe the original content creator is describing Terry frisks, and I am not an expert. I'm not an attorney. This is why I like following, I think his name's John Bryant, the civil rights attorney. I really like his page. He's addressed this several times, what the laws are around Terry frisks and how people's Fourth Amendment rights get violated quite often with this issue, and what the actual circumstances around where a Terry frisk is legal. And a Terry frisk is for officer safety and within a detainment, which I think does activate the Fourth Amendment at that point. And what the problem and misuse of this law is that I believe there needs to be some information that the person may be armed or dangerous for some reason. Either someone has called in, some sort of 911 call, and said I've seen this person with a dangerous weapon or deadly weapon, or they have, they're a suspect in a violent crime of some sort, or what have you. So this is where understanding your rights are so important, because a lot of times with law enforcement, they believe just the blanket statement of officer safety is enough for them to frisk you, and that is not the case. There's far more substance that needs to be there. And again, I'm not an attorney, so if you guys start picking this argument apart, that's fine. Those of you who are attorneys, go ahead and shed light on what the real circumstances are around Terry frisks. But I know there are some, there's X, Y, and Z necessary in that circumstance. It's not so simple. The topic he's talking about also is so much larger. So I'm going with the practical side first before we address the whole liberal thing. The practical side here is that we've also had civil asset forfeitures get way out of control. So I don't, the soccer mom at the airport being searched is a vague kind of reference to any number of things. Was he talking about people going through the metal detectors, or the X-ray machine where you raise your hands up and all that stuff, or was he talking about where DEA agents are actually approaching people in airports and demanding to, search their carry-on luggage and actually stealing people's money, which is a very real thing. If you think I'm making it up, please go look it up. It's a real problem. That's why we have to get rid of civil asset forfeiture, or at least severely rein it in. So there is a very real problem there. It's extremely concerning. I don't know what the statistics are and the amount of money that's being seized of it. I think it's in the hundreds of millions. It's an enormous amount of money, and people always think, it's the drug kingpin with the Lamborghini and his mansion that's being taken, and that is not the case, sadly. Unfortunately, it's a far more nefarious and dark rabbit hole as you go down it. So the funny thing is that basically I don't agree with either content creator, either the liberal nor the original guy, because I'm not sure, and I should be careful when I talk about the original content creator. I don't know what he's trying to say there, right? Is he supporting Terry frisks? Is he supporting civil asset forfeiture? Is he pro-cop? Like, I don't know, but the way it hit me, I don't particularly like it, because I see a lot of problems around that. It's very vague. Now, on the liberal individual here who decides to make it about white and black, that's a whole rabbit hole too, because then there's statistics around all this stuff. There's statistics around, African Americans engaging in criminal activity. There's statistics around all of that stuff, but it is rather stupid in the way that he approached that topic, and it was really dense in the way he did it, and then with the arrogance and ego, he got smacked down pretty well. And yeah, it's just I don't even know where it was really stupid. It's just all I could say about that. I don't know what that guy was thinking he was accomplishing. And I don't think either one of them argued the real merits of the circumstance at all. I don't think either one of them touched on it. So I just don't know why people go to race right away. That like would have never entered my mind either. I wouldn't have thought race. I mean, there are, like I said, there are actual studies out there about race and crime, but it wouldn't have been what entered my mind. What enters my mind are what are our civil rights? What should we be concerned with officer interactions at the TSA level or federal agent level and at the street cop level, and are our rights being eroded, and what, how should we be educated, and all those things are what concern me. Nothing to do with race or any of that. And so the whole video is rather strange for me when I look at it the way I look at it. So I think that's all I'm going to say about there.
Trump or Kamala?
Kamala. I like her, and I'm a Democrat.
And why do you like her?
Because she will be a good female president, and I would love to have a good female president for the U.S.
And what do you think she'll do good for our country?
She'll actually help our country more than Donald Trump would do, because she is smart and she's more reliable.
And what do you think are some exact things she'd do?
She'll do lower income and lower taxes.
Lower income.
So she'd lower everyone's income?
Yes.
Is that a good thing?
That is a good thing.
What do you think about Donald Trump?
Donald Trump is the worst president in the whole wide world.
How come?
Because he
God.
hurt the Capitol building and he started World War III.
Yeah. He laughed at he couldn't keep a straight face anymore. Oh boy. Yeah. Oh boy. I mean, it's the problem with that is, right? Here's the problem with that. We like some of you out there are probably conservatives laughing at that and saying, "Look at those idiot liberal Democrats." But there's a bunch of Trumpers that are conservatives that are just as dumb as that lady. So don't think that this supports either one of you, red or blue, out there. It doesn't. What's really frightening about it is that it's more Orwellian, and it is the sheeple. And the sheeple are the downfall, in the end, they're the true downfall of the society, the civilization, the structures that maintain some sort of hopefully egalitarian circumstances that we attempt to live in. And they are the real problem. If you read Animal Farm, the pigs are the smart, manipulative ones, the ruthless ones that really take over power, and then you got the workhorse and the workers, and then you got the sheep. But the ones who make it all possible are the sheep, because they just go right along, stupid as fuck, right into the slaughterhouse. So, and I don't even know if we should, I don't know. I have a feeling sheep may be smarter than that, honestly. That's I really, animals, I have more respect for animals sometimes in certain circumstances. That woman is a concern. Because my concern is, here's a good question, right? And I don't know how you would have a metric to do this. What is the percent of the population out there, red or blue, that present arguments that at the same level and type that this woman presented here? And those people are frightening to me. That's all I'm going to say there. I don't even know what that was. I don't even know if I could frame that in ego. I don't know how I could frame that. That's just mindless robot, like programmed robot, where the programming, by the way, is so like NPC, like that's an NPC that doesn't even like do very much. It's like the one that gets glitched in the corner, in the older games. I haven't been playing video games that much lately, so I don't know what they're like now. I have a feeling they've probably gotten better. But if you remember, like in some of the older games, sometimes you'd have an NPC that would like get stuck in the corner, just like walking back around doing weird stuff. Like that's how bad the coding is in that one. That one's just defunct. And I think there's a lot like that, millions like that. It's frightening.
Black woman that could be the president of the United States. And my wife, right?
really make history. We have, like I said, we are the first woman of color to be president of the United States. And our country was founded on the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Kamala Harris, there's nothing embodies those values more than a Kamala Harris presidency. So I'm pumped. I'm ready. I am so excited. I'm a proud white dude for Kamala Harris, baby. Let's go. Woo!
Wow. Yeah, I mean, gender and race, I don't know. I grew up in I say the opposite of my mentor, because my mentor grew up in a very white place, and he's basically a black man. I think he's part Native American, and part African American, and part, he's darker skinned, let's put it that way. And I was the opposite. I grew up in the Raisin Bowl. So he would say he grew up as the raisin in the bowl of rice, and I grew up as the grain of rice in the Raisin Bowl. And I think because of that, I saw all kinds of aspects of humans, and I saw people of all races do really shitty things to each other. And I also saw good people that didn't matter what their color was, they were great people. So I just never, however I was raised, and my family life, like my home and the way I was raised had nothing to do with race. And because of those experiences, it never even crossed my mind. So the idea that Kamala is both black and a woman doesn't matter to me. I could give a shit. I would only care that she's the most qualified person for the job. And my hope for our world would be that would be the way we assess everything, right? Can't say it word for word what Dr. King's speech was, right? But his dream I have a dream speech had to do with that one day, we would judge a person not by their skin color, but by their, something along the lines of their character and their capability and their merits, right? Not these other attributes. And that we don't seem to be there. We're still doing the same thing. This guy mentioned something about his polyamorous relationship, and the cuckolding that he's experiencing has somehow shaped his political views. I thought that was really funny. I don't. Hey, I'm actually myself. I'm not. I don't subscribe to contractual monogamy, so I'm fine with it. I don't know what that had to do with anything, and how that somehow has educated him to the sufferings of, people that are a different color skin. It's just, again, this gentleman here, very different from the woman before. Was literally like the NPC that's just broken. This guy, I don't know. I think the energy I got from it, what's that?
It's all right. You're starting to get comments.
Oh, am I?
Jeff Parker says Malcolm X said the most dangerous thing in the world is the white liberal.
Probably, yeah. I agree, because they're used to undermine the society. Usually, it appears at that time it was the Soviet Union and socialism. It's not really communism, because no country's ever achieved communism. Was attempting to infiltrate society. And there's a man out there, and I don't have all the precepts. I just started watching him. He was talking about subversion and how in the Soviet Union, and possibly still continuing, there's a major course that's taught to almost everyone, not just people going to join the KGB or whatever the current intelligence service is called in Russia, but everyone is taught the ideals of subversion and how to subvert Western capitalism and democracy. And one of the precepts there is to point out this idea that we have this dystopia based off of racism, based off of economic inequality, whatever, to find these sore spots and exploit them. And the white liberal seems to be really fanatical about latching onto especially this racial issue. And it is a major concern. I don't understand how. I can't relate to it myself, because, like I said, when I meet someone, I don't see skin color. There's a lot of things I see. Believe me, I've met all kinds of people of different colors, and when I meet a thug, I know when I'm talking to a thug. When I meet someone who's educated, I can tell when I'm talking to an educated person. When I meet someone who has actual integrity and convictions and a solid ethical base, I can't tell that right away, actually. That takes a while. I have to see how someone behaves and what they do to really understand if that's who they are. But the point is, I'm not looking at the color of their skin or their gender to determine what I think about them or where they should support our society on some political level. It's crazy to me. So, yeah. Always happy to answer questions. Yeah. My specialty is mostly ego, topics around ego, how I believe ego is the true challenge for our species. It's a very specific definition of ego. For those of you who are just joining, I opened this episode speaking about this. And yeah, my particular area is in psychedelics and evolving human consciousness. So that's what my past 29 years of experience is about. So I'm not a political expert of any kind. I'm not a legal expert. I'm not any of those things. But I am the founder of a major psychedelic treatment platform called psychedelics.com. And so I have a perspective on the world and our reality and our interactions with other human beings. So that's where I'm coming from with pretty much all of my commentary. So, yeah.
These kids want to die. And the reason they want to die is because they're teenagers. And when you're a teenager, you're supposed to want to die. But that death is supposed to be metaphorical and spiritual. Your childhood has to die so you can become an adult. But nobody's told them it's metaphorical and spiritual. So they have this death urge that they then actualize in the physical world, as opposed to through ritual or through maturity. And I've often thought that it's similar,
yeah, that music's annoying as fuck.
This culture is so wretched, and so many people are so very, very unhappy, and they want this nightmare to end, and they don't recognize that the death that they want is a cultural death, and it is a spiritual and metaphorical death. And so, especially because within this culture, the spirit is,
thank God,
separated from the earth and from the flesh, and so you can't have this transformation that simply occurs in your body. And so they make lots of depleted uranium, and they kill the world in all physical reality as opposed to that spiritual transformation. And so I think that actually accounts for a lot of the passivity and a lot of the denial, and also a lot of the reason for the destruction.
I feel like he started off talking about one thing and then went to something more global, perhaps. I feel like initially he was talking about like teenage suicide, and then later he mentioned depleted uranium, which is like used in ordnance, especially like armor-piercing rounds, or anti-tank large rounds, or 50 caliber anti-material rounds, stuff like that. So I got a little confused there, but I think I kind of follow his thread and what he's talking about. And it's weird because a lot of things can be really layered, and I don't know that he was communicating everything that was in his head. I think that teenagers commit suicide for a lot of reasons, not just because it's a transition from childhood to adulthood and maybe the realities of what it means to be an adult, but I think there's a very real sense that this world is a fucked up place. And it is. It's a mess. It's toxic as hell. We don't, especially here, just talking about the cereal thing. We were just talking about how cereal in Canada doesn't contain the red dye 40 and other preservatives and things, like a Fruit Loop cereal or something like that, and is made here in the U.S. without all the additives and preservatives and the more toxic items that are allowed by the FDA. And yet we aren't provided the Canadian version that's cleaner. We're provided the American version that has all the crap in it. It's kind of an example of what I mean. We're living in a very toxic society. So it's not like these kids are just losing their minds because of the natural progression from childhood to adulthood. They're losing their minds because there's a very real issue with our society and our world. I've framed it in the frame of the ego. That has real concrete implications to what we're engaging in. And at the big level, and this is something that I bring up every once in a while, I've talked about something that kind of goes to the level of like Guns, Germs, and Steel, the book that was written by, I forget the author. And the ideas of the original initiation of civilization on our planet, which began with the adoption of an agrarian-based civilization and culture, which then changed the entire mentality of human beings from hunters and gatherers that saw the world as spiritually imbued and not even possible to be owned, to one that was objectified and owned and controlled. And what the results of that have been over the past 10,000 years have been self-evident. And we've attempted to fix those problems by adopting different economic structures. So people who think that we're going to swing back to and try communism, for instance, here, I mentioned that a couple times today, in the United States, think that that's somehow going to be a better option or completely diluted. And then, thinking that you can do some reformed version of capitalism maybe is going to fix the issues is also diluted. There are ways that I think we can navigate in a better way, politically speaking. For instance, when it comes to campaign contributions, I spoke about this before, that we allow privatized money and corporate money to affect our political structures to such a deep degree that we don't have a republic or a democracy anymore. We have something called a plutocracy, which is a democracy compromised by moneyed interests. So, that gets into the weeds of, well, how can we restructure all this? But at a deeper level, and I think that's where this gentleman's coming from, like a much deeper spiritual level, like I think that a species that attains the ultimate level of sophistication to even have, say, interstellar travel capability will not operate from a place of economic currency anymore. So there won't be ownership. There would not be the need for that. And what we think is that we're going to legislate our way through all this and enforce our way through all this. And I don't believe that. I believe that we're going to have to evolve our way through this to a point right now where the evolution is actually at a conscious level, and that what the evolutionary stopgap for us is overcoming what I call the ego, for lack of better terms. A better term might actually be hubris. Toltecs like the words or the term self-importance, but that is a major obstacle in the way of a higher level of consciousness, where we don't need to destroy each other and go to war against each other and dominate each other and keep some people poor and barely feeding themselves, or even starving, and some people living extremely luxurious, affluent lives. That finding that place where we interact as a cohesive, harmonic species in harmony with each other and with our environment is what the real answer is here, and we're just not there. I sometimes am pessimistic about the future of Homo sapiens, because I think that we could end up where it's necessary for another iteration of evolution that could take millions of years to then achieve something like a species out there that I think is very real, that we do have visits from far more advanced civilizations than ourselves, and that there's a complete incorrect idea that came from the science fiction writers that there's such a thing as a parasitic, malicious, alien species that would come and attack any planet. I don't think it's possible, because I think the trajectory from, basic, conscious beings that are developing technology to the point of actually being able to go to another star is so long and so vast in the technologies that are achieved to that point, that if they don't address the issue of ego within themselves, that they will destroy themselves. And so I think that's where we're at, and I think that's manifested in all of our interactions with each other, including teenagers and their experience of teenage angst as they realize, as I realized as a kid, how shitty this world really is. And I think that's what they're experiencing. So then he went into, like I said, a much more global vision of I think what he was talking about, wars and destroying each other. So I have a very cohesive theory on what this is all about, and I think what it is we're just not aware enough as a species yet. Our consciousness hasn't reached a point that we are able to counteract the technology and the adoption of agriculture and our ability to manipulate our environment to such an extreme degree. Our consciousness evolution hasn't caught up to that. And so, and I think we're still far behind with the screen time, and as technology continues to increase, I don't think we're caught up yet. And so that's creating a lot of problems. It's not just technologically based, because ego began, many thousands of years ago, and was, I believe, really supercharged by the agrarian movements. And so that's where the real problems are. But interesting video from that guy. I just got a little confused for a second when he shifted gears on me. But yeah, I also didn't see him 100% express any real, like I'm trying to shade this in a little more, because he did mention something about our spiritual essence being separate from our material biological selves and things like that, but I didn't see a real cohesive theory on where he was trying to go with that. Just somehow that teenagers are committing suicide and we're killing each other in wars or something like that. So we're on our way towards awareness as an entire universe, and I believe the universe is attempting to become aware of itself. That is the actual driving force of all of this, and that's the theory. We can go into that theory more another time, but or if anyone's interested. But yeah, that's what I see there. Strange video with strange music. Yeah.
Excuse me, do you have a dream?
Everyone has dreams whenever they want.
Sadly, not everyone does have dreams, but what's your dream?
Fly.
You want to fly?
What's the dream?
My dream is to help people realise they can do anything. I believe people can do anything. They don't realise how amazing they are. But I like actionable dreams, because then it proves that it's possible.
What do we really want?
What do you really want?
A building of love. It's a building of love. It's a building of love.
Where do you get this deepness from?
We're in paradise.
We don't even realise it, you mean?
People forget. Really, everything beautiful has already been created. Can you fashion better than your skin? Can a man paint better than God? Can you paint better than the eye? Can paint?
I don't think so.
No. Can you sing better than sex? No. So these dreams, they're great for the purpose of finding yourself, and then you need to let go of that mask. Otherwise, it's gonna consume you.
What do you do for a living?
Work in construction. If a monkey wants to build, at least he should honour God and make it beautiful. That's what I think.
Thanks for sharing it, Les. Appreciate it. Don't know what to do. Thank you, man. I love you.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. My mother's a city person. She loves the city. She loves the culture. She loves the theater. She loves the buildings and architecture. She loves all that. And I'm not as enamored with it as she is, because for me, nature is a far better place than any city ever could be. And so the traffic, the vibes from people struggling in the grind, the hustle and bustle, the loudness, the inability to find true solitude and a moment of quietness with the natural world, that can't be substituted with anything. Like a moment sitting on the beach, and there's nothing like a beach with no one on it. Very different to be on a beach with no one on it. You got to travel pretty far to find places like that. Go down to Chile or something, or probably Peru, or you used to be able to go to Northern California, maybe the Oregon coast. You can actually, in Oregon, you can find a couple places, but there's beaches out there that are truly special. They're usually populated by people, but if you can find one that's really special and no one's there, there's a feeling that comes with that. And I appreciate that far more than any theater or concert or architectural design or anything. And I think that's kind of what he's talking about there. I also think that he was starting to talk about ego. Absolutely, he's talking about identity and people being consumed within their identity that's attached to these things we build as humans. So yeah, I definitely saw that in that person's commentary. It was interesting that he's in construction. And, it's interesting to see how construction's changed over, the last several hundred years or a couple thousand years even. It seems that we've really moved away because of economics, right? It's far more economical to use certain materials in a certain way than to, and in some cases more structurally sound, so I'll give you that. But there still could be the use of things. When you go look at some of these old European buildings, they are amazing, the art and the craftsmanship that goes into them. But do I think their societies and civilizations were any better than ours today? In some ways they probably were, just sheerly for the fact that they had less numbers, less people, and less of the types of technology that I think are influencing our world now in negative ways. Not that technology is always influencing things in negative ways. There's positive influences from technology as well. But yeah, again, I'm not attached to any of that. For me, the natural world is the happiest place. I would rather be on a lake or a beach or in a mountain or in a forest and experiencing that than I would ever feel experiencing something in a city. There's community, there's experiencing connection with humans, but I don't feel that in cities. I know other people disagree with me, but I think they are cherry picking what they see. I think they don't really want to see how much isolation there is within a lot of big cities. And the larger the city, the more isolation there becomes, which is a strange irony, right? So I think like somewhere in like Mumbai, you're going to have a lot of isolation with 32 million people in one urban area over, say, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I actually was just in Pittsburgh. I don't know what the population is there. It's pretty small. People there have a different vibe, attitude, and friendliness than people in much larger areas. And you can go to New York, of course, go to Manhattan, you'll get a sense of what the vibe is there. So, there's definitely ego involved there. And that's definitely what's going on. And I'm far more into the natural world, and we need to find a way to be in harmony with our natural world again. We need to figure that out, not just for the sake of, we're killing the environment, but actually because it's affecting our mental health at a deep level, all of us. So anyway, that's what I see there. So yeah, guys, most of this it's been an interesting episode because some of them were just kind of head scratchers. Some were just kind of funny, like the woman who was just for Kamala for no reason. There was no reasoning there. There's the other gentleman that was the polyamorous relationship was why he was for Kamala, I guess. It didn't make any sense. So it's just kind of head scratchers of really what's programming. So this, for me, was this episode was about the matrix that people are stuck in, which is also a manifestation of the ego, I think, on a certain kind of global level. We kind of have our collective global egos, and then we also have individual ego. And I kind of see that's what this was about. So, as always, it doesn't leave me with any real, optimistic view on things. I'm not, right now. I don't think things are going to change drastically for the better right now, because I don't think people are waking up in droves. I think people are very programmed, very programmed and locked into some sort of programming that they just walk around like NPCs. It is very much like being in a video game. It's like we're in some sort of matrix for sure. People are programmed in all sorts of ways, religiously, politically, even scientifically, believe it or not. Scientific minded people can sometimes fall victim to scientific dogma and even like a scientific superiority complex in a way that they think they've got all the answers because they're scientifically minded, and that's an interesting mindset as well. It's also ego-driven. So people are programmed. Lots and lots of programming out there, whether it's trauma-based programming, and usually what it is actually, it's a conglomeration of multiple types of programming, including past trauma that leads to certain reactions, including parenting, obviously, and early childhood programming, peers and environmental programming. All of that leads to an adult that if you don't think for yourself and you don't really spend a lot of time examining what you believe, and this is the fourth fundamental of mental, emotional, spiritual skill development, is examining your beliefs. You don't do that work, then you just become basically an NPC. So I think that's the theme for today. The NPCs of our world.